don't want to bore anybody, but it is really, you know, San Antonio is in many ways a very, very key part of my business background. And people don't know that because I live in Houston, and our home is in Friendswood, which is a suburb. Our corporate office is in Pasadena. But in fact, when I saw Roy here on the way up in the elevator, Roy says, "Hey, Ryan, I'm actually here to see you." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I work for Valero. I'm a VP with Valero. Is that right? And I mentioned to him, as I mentioned to a couple other people, Valero is my company's largest company. And you know, I've been over to Valero's corporate campus several times, and I can honestly say that our company would not be where it is today if not for Valero. Because early on, when we were developing new technology around integrity programs that Robert mentioned, Valero was a first big company to reach out and say, "We're going to start using you guys because you have such a great approach to this," and really got us kicked off. Since then, numerous other companies from large, major integrated oil companies all the way down to little independent producers in the upstream side of the business have used us. So it's neat for me to be in San Antonio where Valero is based. You know, let's talk for a minute. Robert's got a lot of creative ideas about how to grow the Republican Party in Bexar County. And I want to talk about that for a second, knowing that we have at least one other elected official in the room. And you didn't tell me, what kind of judge are you?
I was judge here for 3 years, but I'm running for election this time.
Oh, okay.
If there's anybody on the
For the
ethics
one,
commission here.
come on, for the 150.
150th District Court.
District Court judge, okay.
Yes, sir.
You know, a lot of times these days, and I have to say, by the way, because we were talking about what it's like to run for office, that I think it is actually much more difficult to run to be a judge. Because when you're running for a judge, everyone goes, "I have no idea what all these judges do. You're a district court judge, family court judge, appellate court judge. No one knows what they are, and you try to." It's almost as hard as trying to convince someone that the Railroad Commission does nothing with trains. I mean, my kid, one of the stories I love to tell, this is early on in the campaign, when my wife and I were deciding if I was going to run for office. Had not served in elected office before. And what really drew me to it was the need to have people in office that were, forgive me, but not just politicians, who brought real expertise to the table, particularly at a time when oil and gas is so crucial to our state. Having spent my entire career in oil and gas, and I'll be the first engineer to serve as a railroad commissioner in 50 years. So I felt like, man, this is an opportunity to really have an impact and to really serve the state in a way that may make a big difference. So my wife and I, we thought about this, we prayed about it, and we said, you know what, this is something we're called to do, so let's do it. So I sit down with my kids. They are Sarah, Luke, and Lance, and they're 10, 8, and 5. And we said, hey, you know, I'm going to run for public office. And of course the kids, "Oh, this is incredible. Okay, Daddy, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to be the next Texas Railroad Commissioner." Yay! And of course they're picturing riding on trains and tooting the horn and stuff. And I tell them, it has nothing to do with railroads. I mean, the look of distraught, it was real crush. My daughter actually says, "Daddy, is that what they call false advertising?" Real serious. I mean, now my kids know more than 97% of voters because they know what happens at the Railroad Commission. So at a time when oil and gas is so crucial, and at a time when there's so much happening in the state, it's an opportunity for us to take real steps forward in energy. And it's a time for the Republican Party to do some special things. And so being here at the Republican Party headquarters, I want to talk about some of those. And one in particular that we don't do enough of, but is important not just to us as Republicans, but to the business community, some of whom are represented here today, and even the state as a whole, and even those who don't always vote with us. This is important. It's that we need to think beyond just the normal Republican rhetoric. We've got to be leaders. We've got to be real leaders. Robert's been talking about some ideas on how to attract people to the Republican Party, and it's not going to be by just talking Republican rhetoric. I mean, let's face it, I'm not running against Obama. I think he's a terrible president. I think maybe he may go down in history as one of the worst presidents that the country's ever had. But that's not, competing with him is not my job as a railroad commissioner. I need to be talking about the opportunities in energy. I need to be talking about the things that are happening right here in San Antonio because of the growth of our energy industry. It's my job as a railroad commissioner to give the citizens of the state of Texas confidence in the growth in our industry. Right? We want everyone out there to be proud of what's happening. I don't care how you vote in November. That's not true, I really do care. But regardless of how you vote, when we get to December and January and February, I want everyone to say, I'm really excited about the growth of energy in this state. I'm excited about the jobs that it creates. I'm excited about the guy whose parents didn't go to college, who had no extra money, got a job as a trucking company, now runs a trucking company and is worth $10 million in the energy industry. Those stories are all over the state of Texas. And that's what we need to be talking about. That's real leadership. We need to be talking about those things with people because that's what attracts people to our party, to our state, and most importantly, to our principles. When they talk about free market, they're talking about the fact that it's not the job of government to pick winners and losers. It's not the job of government to control industry. It's simply the job of government, and as a railroad commissioner, to give people confidence in what the energy industry is doing. That's real leadership. And my hope is that as a Republican Party here in Bexar County can be a real example of that to this community, that we will see a lot of people become attracted to our party. Let's face it, we all know the demographics, right? We know that the demographics say that the Hispanic population in Texas is growing faster than any other demographic, and that demographic hasn't voted in our party as much as we'd like it to get active in the Republican Party. Yet it's a very conservative group of people. So we will attract them to our party by talking about leadership, talking about real opportunity, talking about jobs, talking about opportunities for people that didn't happen. And I certainly have lived it. As Robert said, grew up, my parents were both teachers. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. No, we certainly had a roof over our heads and 3 square meals a day, but there was no extra money. There wasn't family trips to Disney World. It was family trips going camping. The fun nights out, when we would go out to dinner, we went to Furr's Cafeteria. That was it, man. We were going out, we were going high on the hog tonight. But now, here I am, able to not only run for office, but we have a business that employs over 400 people. We do business all over the world, some here in Texas, but all the way to the Middle East, California, Canada, South America, all over the place. And all because of the opportunities of the energy industry. So that's what I hope that we're able to talk about. That's what I hope San Antonio and the Bexar County Republican Party is able to communicate to the people in this area, because that will really lead to long-term success of the state as people understand those principles. So I know for those who are here, who are from the business community, George, who we just met, George owns his own business now. He's about the same age I was. George, right?
Yes.
Started his company the same age I was, 31. I started mine, he's 31. And it's those of us that have to get active and really put our resources and our time, and it's hard to do, to step out of this business that pays the bills and puts food on the table for your kids and your spouse and your family, to step into politics and get involved, to contribute financially, contribute with your time. It can be challenging to do, but as we leave here and go out and really try to help tell people, look, man, this is where it happens. This is where the rubber meets the road. And when we know there's a Republican community group, when we know that our county Republican Party is getting out, is really attracting that new group to our party, we got to get behind them. That's why I'm here today. That's why I drove in from Houston for this, was to really say, man, this is where the action is. It's not at the state Republican convention. I did not convince one single person to vote for me out of the 7,000 that I spoke to there. Not one. They're convinced. Here's where the magic happens. We're out attracting new people to the party and doing it by really demonstrating leadership. So, Marathon is represented here, which I really appreciate. Like I said, Valerio, I know you got drugged here by your wife. I don't hold that against you. But those businesses that are active in the community, we got to have a real partnership and put those dollars, put those resources into helping grow the party here in Bexar County. So I'm excited to be here, and I sure hope that you guys will have me back and let me continue to work with you to build the party here locally, where it's so important. That's all I want to say to this group, because I know, once again, I'm somewhat preaching to the choir. Any questions for me before I wrap up? I know I don't get a chance to visit with everybody as much as I'd like to.
How do you think this fracking is going to be affected by Denton County?
Oh, it's such a great question. And frankly, I think that is probably...
We got Colorado that just banned it. New York's banned it. California.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, the city of Denton, up in the north part of just north of Dallas, had a ballot initiative, basically, that came before their city council last week to ban fracking inside the city limits. Now, you might say, city of Denton, who cares, right? It's got 275 wells. What impact is that? And I will tell you that I believe it might be the quintessential issue affecting oil and gas in our state right now. Because it draws into question, can a local city council basically usurp the rights of a mineral owner and a landowner to develop those minerals because it's so close? That's really the quintessential issue. And ultimately, we have a state agency that employs engineers, scientists, geologists that do the research to really make educated scientific calls about how fracking, how drilling affects citizens, affects the community. That's what our job is to do. Instead, we have a city council with no experience in oil and gas, no expertise that has been asked to make that call by a small group of citizens. And I think if we go down the road of cities, municipalities, groundwater districts, counties, all putting in place additional restrictions, rules, limitations on drilling and production, it will make operating oil and gas inside the state of Texas very, very difficult. And so my hope is, and I'll say even my expectation, and my responsibility, to answer your question, is to educate some voters, to help them understand what the Railroad Commission is doing. Because at the end of the day, when there really is a mom, she's not partisan. When there's a mom that is concerned about her kids because of a drilling operation going on down the street, it is my job, it's the Railroad Commission's job to say, I'm concerned about your kids too, because I've got young kids. And I want to make sure that that operation is safe. Because what I don't want to do is make mistakes based on emotion, not based on science. Make mistakes that affect the entire industry and the entire state. Let's make sure what's going on is safe, and I'm going to let you know that it's safe, and it's my job to do it. And it's not the job of the city council. It's not the job of a bunch of people who don't have the science and don't have the data. That's why we're here. That's why I report to you directly, the voter. I don't get appointed by the governor. I don't get appointed by the federal government. I am elected by you, the voter. That's who I answer to. So that is my job, and that is probably the biggest task in front of me, is to make sure that the voters know that. Because I think if they do know that, then people will get behind the model we already have and get behind our industry.